It's been a cold start to the month of December so far, as we've seen a series of cold blasts. If you take a look at the graph on the right hand corner of the screen, all those areas in purple are anywhere from 15 to 20 degrees below average. Of course, across the west, where we've had more ridging in place, they have been above average. And then, of course, further south down there in Florida, you haven't really been participating in some of those colder shots of air. But we've also had several significant snow events. In fact, the seasonal snowfall total so far, our year to date, the most we've seen in a season since 2019. So we're definitely off to an active start, and we've seen a lot of snow across a good part of the mountain regions. But of course, we've come back off those two series of snowstorms here lately, and even one further south that got all the way down into portions of Texas, and a little bit of snow there into Oklahoma as well. And it's still on the colder side. In fact, where you see most of the snow on the ground, obviously with the snowpack, that's definitely helping them stay on the much colder side. With even this morning, you're into the teens as far as temperatures go, 20s further south, widespread 30s once you get into portions of the southeast. But it's definitely still below average for a good part of the US. And what we've seen kind of going forward for the weekend ahead, that ridging that's been predominantly out west is still going to be staying there. We've got a ridge over the top in Alaska that's promoting that cross polar flow setup, and yet we're going to continue with that cross polar flow type setup with more colder air coming in from the Northwest Territories down into the lower 48. And then once you get further south, you get more of a kind of a glancing blow, if you will, especially across portions of the southeast and portions of the southern plains as well. But this is a classic La Nina type setup. I mean, if you look at the overall two jet streams, this is your polar jet, which is typically more pronounced and more active during La Nina type setups. And that's basically where we're getting the cold flow and the cross polar flow, bringing the moisture supply across the northern jet stream. And then further south, it's been going forward about non-existent. The subtropical jet more or less goes to sleep, and there's not any precipitation is going to be entering portions of a good part of the western regions, much of the desert southwest, even much of this southern plains. It's really not until we get the far exterior southern portions with more Gulf moisture to be able to tap into that some of those areas across the Florida Panhandle and across the extreme portions of the East Coast will be on the wetter side. And that's exactly what we're finding through the weekend, as that subtropical jet stream, like I mentioned, is pretty much not existent. It will be bone dry across this area that's highlighted across into the white regions. The greens are your precipitation, and of course most of this will be in the form of snow across the higher elevations. And then the heavier rains come back for Washington and Oregon. But we'll also see more snow going to be on the table as that cross polar flow continues to produce more snow over the similar areas you've already seen a lot, especially there into Minnesota and back into Iowa. Yes, that's you. Northern Illinois yet again are going to be getting a little bit more snow over the weekend with this new system that will be coming in. But once we get into the middle of next week, what we're going to be seeing is this ridge of high pressure going to be more or less taking over more of the western regions, especially across the Rockies and into the southern plains. Those temperatures are going to go upward. And of course, with all the drier air in place, that just produces more sunshine. And of course, more sunshine this time of year, you're going to be warming those temperatures up to well above average in a big way. You're still getting the cross polar flow type setup. It's just not as pronounced. And it's going to be shifting a little bit further to the north, and the placement of the snow and the colder air will much more be highlighted across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the far northern interiors of the Great Lakes going forward by the middle of next week. as we'll have that more of a more the subtropical jet stream will be taking taking a sleep, and the polar jet will be a lot more active. So you got a series of fronts and a series of little short waves that will be moving across. There's the 540 line. Yes, that brings the heavier snow to the north of that back into Minnesota as well as into Wisconsin, getting into Michigan. You should start to get more healthy totals across your region. This won't be until the middle of next week. And yeah, as far as moisture supply, you can see it's pretty much a tale of two weather systems, right? You got a more of a split pattern with the drier setup across the south, the more wetter setup across the north. And that's exactly what the Climate Prediction Center is expecting going forward. So it's going to be pretty dry across the southern branch of the jet stream. That includes most of California, most of the desert Southwest, much of the southern plains, getting into the southeast. It's not until the polar jet becomes more active we'll watch a series of cold shots will be coming in. Most of this will be in the form of rain, and then once you move inland across the interior regions, we'll be switching over to all the heavy mountain snows. And then, yes, all this above average precipitation will likely be in the form of some wet snowflakes mixed in at times as that polar jet continues to remain alive and active. There it is. By the middle of next week, we see those temperature anomalies kind of warming up in a big way. Yes, we're talking widespread 60s and 70s, some 80s even further down in the deep south. But you get the idea. It's going to be definitely warmer than average across at least the southern branch, and then the northern branch, especially where they have the snowpack in place. You're going to be definitely on the colder side. And these are high temperatures, all right? 24 degrees for a high. We're talking in the teens for highs in the Dakotas. So yes, that is definitely colder air continuing to push in across that region. And by Thursday, things get even a little bit more interesting. That's why I kind of expanded the view on the North American view. This is more or less December the 11th timeframe, next Thursday. Yeah, we could be even seeing those temperatures even warmer across a good part of the southern branch of the jet stream. You've got the cross polar flow still set up, but look at all this pink that's really starting to build up there in the Northwest Territories and Alaska. That is some seriously cold air, if not extreme cold air, that's going to be building across Alaska and the Northwest Territories. Yeah, that's not a misprint, folks. That is a minus 54, right? I mean, that is extremely intense cold air building up there into Alaska. And it's one of those things, obviously, when a cold air starts to build and it's so extreme like this, then obviously it's not going to be able to stay up there forever, right? It will be building as much of the south will be starting to warm up. You're going to have extreme cold really starting to build across the north, and that may be a leading indicator to maybe what's to come later down the line, maybe even towards Christmas week, because this cold air, it's not going to stay up there forever. It's eventually going to be able to dislodge itself and push itself further southbound and link it up potentially as more of an active subtropical jet stream gets a little bit more active, right? Because the next 10 days, it's all about the polar jet, right? We've got all the warmer anomalies across much of the west, much of the south. It's not really until the northern branch of the jet stream. And these are well below average. This is an average over 7 days, folks. So this is definitely a colder shot of air and a colder time. You've already been well below average. You're going to continue to remain well below average if you're within this allotted line, within this green area. That's 10 to 15 degrees averaging every single day below average, which you would typically be for this time of year, and a little bit more modified once you swing down in the southeast. And now Florida will be getting into the action. But as far as precipitation goes for the next 7 days, again, it's going to be all about the polar jet. So that's going to be active. Most of this will be in the form of rain. The further you live towards the coast, then further inland, most of this will be in the form of snow, if not really heavy snow across the mountain regions. And most of this will also be in the form of snow and even lake effect enhanced snow once you get towards the Great Lakes. Of course, bone dry across the southern branch of the jet stream, and it will be taking advantage of some of that Gulf moisture once you get the far extreme corridors of, say, I-10, I-20 area, Florida Panhandle, far extreme portions of Georgia and the Carolinas. And really, again, beyond that, heading into the following week, we still remain above average. So there's going to be a period where we're going to see above average temperatures as we head into the middle of the month. And of course, we'll be watching on the longer term basis what's going to be building up there into the Yukon, the Northwest Territories, up in there into Alaska, as a beginning signal to maybe what's to come as we head beyond that middle part of December. So guys, I appreciate you watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch my next update while I protect you before and after the storm.